On Tuesday afternoon in March 2011, the kind of day that starts completely ordinary and ends with someone's life changed forever. Our subject, let's call him Marcus for the sake of this story, was a 21-year-old business student at a large state university. By most accounts, he was normal. No criminal history, no major red flags, just another student struggling to make ends meet, like millions of others. He was walking through the mall near his campus when he decided to check his bank balance at an ATM machine outside a Chase Bank branch. His account had somewhere around $47. He needed to verify exactly how broke he was before deciding whether to buy lunch or skip it. When he approached the machine, he noticed something unusual. The door to the ATM's cash compartment was slightly open. Not just a little bit, it was visibly ajar. And as he got closer, he could see something that made his heart stop. Cash. Stacks and stacks of it just sitting inside the machine. His first instinct was to look around. Was anyone else seeing this? He glanced left and right. The hallway was relatively empty. Maybe 10 or 12 people scattered throughout the mall, none of them paying attention to him or the ATM. Marcus stood there for a moment, staring at the open compartment. He could see the money clearly now. Bills. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Stacked in their paper wrappers like they'd been hastily shoved into the machine without securing it properly. His mind started racing. What should he do? Call the bank? Leave it alone? But then curiosity took over. He wanted to know exactly what he was looking at. That's when he made the decision that would set everything in motion. He took out his phone and started recording. Not in a frantic, I need evidence kind of way. More like a, I can't believe this is happening kind of way. The kind of reflex action where you pull out your phone because your brain is trying to process something surreal. Like when you see a celebrity or a crazy car accident, you film it to prove it happened. He filmed the open compartment. He filmed the stacks of cash. He got closer and zoomed in on the money. The video was shaky, nervous. You could almost feel his uncertainty through the recording. Now, let's pause here for a moment and understand what was happening in Marcus's mind. He was a broke college student, not a I don't have money for Starbucks broke. We're talking about genuinely struggling to pay for textbooks, eating ramen most nights, wearing the same 3 shirts in rotation. His parents didn't have much to give him. He was taking out loans. The financial stress was real. And here, in front of him, was more money than he'd probably earn in 5 years of work after graduation. It was sitting there, unattended, completely accessible. The angel on one shoulder, devil on the other scenario played out in real time. He later told people that he genuinely thought about it. Not just for a second, but for actual minutes. He could take some. Who would know? The bank was insured. The money would be recovered. Nobody would really be hurt. These were the thoughts running through his head, the classic rationalization that criminals use to justify what they're about to do. But here's where it gets interesting. Marcus didn't immediately grab the money. Instead, he made a phone call. He called Tyler, who was in class at the time. He told Tyler what he'd found and asked him what he should do. Tyler reportedly said something like, "Dude, call the bank. That's the right thing to do." He hung up pretty quickly because he was in class. Marcus was left standing there alone again with the ATM, with the open compartment, with $500,000 staring him in the face. He filmed a bit more, and then, still filming, he did something that shocked him as much as anyone. He took out some of the cash, just to see what it felt like, just to hold it. He grabbed a small stack, maybe $3,000 or $4,000, and stuffed it quickly into his backpack. His hands were shaking. He kept filming. The video would later show his face, his panicked expression, his nervous energy. Then he made another decision. He walked away from the ATM and left the mall. The entire incident, from discovery to walking away with a partial stack of cash, took maybe 15 to 20 minutes. But in those 20 minutes, Marcus had crossed a line. He'd gone from, I found something unusual, to, I'm stealing from a bank. Or had he? This is where the moral complexity actually begins. What happened next over the following 48 hours became increasingly chaotic. Marcus returned to his apartment with the cash in his backpack. He was conflicted, deeply conflicted. He'd stolen money, that much was clear, but the situation was weird. The ATM was broken, the bank's security had failed, and there was literally $500,000 just sitting there. He made a decision that, in hindsight, was catastrophically poor. He decided to tell people about it, not authorities, his friends. He showed the cash to his roommate. He called Tyler back and told him he'd taken the money. He even texted a few other friends in his group chat making jokes about the situation. Screenshots of those messages would later become key evidence. But Marcus also couldn't stop thinking about the moral issue. The angel was still on his shoulder, arguing with the devil. He was genuinely conflicted about what he'd done. So he did something else. He drove back to the mall. When he got there were police cars outside the Chase Bank branch. The ATM had been discovered to be broken, and the bank had already filed a report with authorities. Officers were investigating, the security footage was being reviewed. Marcus, in a moment of either genius or stupidity, it's hard to say which was, decided not to approach the police. Instead, he went home. Over the next day, his anxiety grew. He couldn't sleep. He kept checking the news, waiting for something about the ATM discovery to appear. He was paranoid. Every time his phone buzzed, he thought it was the police. Then something unexpected happened. His conscience got the better of him. On day 2 after the discovery, Marcus made a decision. He called the Chase Bank directly. He didn't talk to the police. He talked to the bank's fraud department, and he told them everything. He said he'd found the ATM broken. He said he'd taken some cash. He said he wanted to return it. He gave them details about what he'd done, when he'd done it, and where the money was. The bank immediately transferred his information to their security department. Within hours, Marcus received a call from someone who identified themselves as bank security. They asked him to bring the money to the bank immediately. Marcus gathered the cash. He also gathered the video evidence, and he drove to the bank where he met with 2 security officers in a private office. This is where things took a very different turn than he expected. When Marcus walked into that security office, he was expecting a conversation about responsibility and consequences. He wasn't expecting what actually happened. The security officers weren't angry. They were, in fact, quite interested in what he had to say. They asked him to explain everything, what he'd seen, what he'd done, why he'd come back and called them. Marcus showed them his phone with the video footage, and that's when things escalated. The officers told Marcus that the ATM wasn't just short a few $1,000s. They told him that when they'd opened it fully that morning, they'd discovered that nearly $500,000 was missing. The cash that Marcus had found with the open compartment was only a fraction of what was supposed to be in the machine. Marcus felt his stomach drop. They thought he'd taken more than he actually had. He tried to explain. He told them he'd only taken maybe $4,000. He showed them the video. He explained that there was already cash missing when he got there. But the security officers exchanged looks. They weren't convinced. One of them left the room. When he returned, a local police officer was with him. The officer informed Marcus that he was being detained for questioning regarding the theft of $500,000 from the bank's ATM machine. What had started as Marcus doing the right thing by turning himself in had somehow transformed into Marcus being a suspect for a massive theft. The video footage he thought would prove his innocence became evidence against him. The cash he'd brought back voluntarily made him look like a thief who'd panicked and returned part of what he'd stolen. Marcus was taken to a police station. He was read his rights, he was placed in an interrogation room, and for the next several hours, he was questioned about the $500,000. Investigators wanted to know how long had he been planning this? Who else was involved? Where was the rest of the money? Had he been working with someone inside the bank? Marcus maintained his story. He'd found the ATM open. He'd taken a small amount out of panic or curiosity. He'd realized it was wrong and called the bank to turn himself in. He had no idea about the full $500,000. But here's the problem. His story, while likely true, sounded exactly like what someone would say if they were lying. The coincidence of him finding the ATM just as it was being robbed seemed too convenient. And his video, instead of being exonerating, looked like documentation of the crime itself. Investigators actually had to consider that Marcus might have been part of a larger theft. Maybe he was the low-level guy sent to grab what he could, while someone else inside the bank or in management had stolen the majority. For 48 hours, Marcus was in custody. He couldn't leave. He had no lawyer. He called his parents, who were horrified and confused. His mother drove to the police station. His father told him to stop talking and get a lawyer. Eventually, real lawyers got involved, and they began what would be a months-long process of clearing Marcus's name and proving that his story was actually true. While Marcus was dealing with being a suspect, investigators were also looking at other angles. The bank launched the full internal investigation. They reviewed all security footage around the ATM. They investigated their own employees. They looked at maintenance records and service logs. What they discovered was that the ATM had been serviced the day before Marcus found it. A maintenance technician from an external company had been called to fix a mechanical issue with the cash dispensing mechanism. When investigators reviewed that technician's background, red flags appeared everywhere. The man had a criminal history. He'd worked at multiple banks over the years, and several of those banks had experienced mysterious cash discrepancies during his tenure. Further investigation revealed that the technician had deliberately left the ATM in an unsecured state. He'd rigged it so that the cash compartment door wouldn't close properly. His plan was probably to come back later and retrieve the money when fewer people were around. Or maybe he had someone else grab it. But Marcus had found it first. The investigation also revealed that the technician had coordinated with someone, possibly a bank employee, possibly someone else, to ensure that the ATM would be left in this vulnerable state during a specific shift when certain security cameras would be down for maintenance. What had looked like a coincidence, Marcus finding the ATM at exactly the right moment, actually turned out to be part of a deliberately orchestrated plan. Marcus had just accidentally intercepted what was supposed to be a major theft. Once this information came to light, Marcus was cleared of all suspicion. The case against him was dropped. He was released without charges. But the charges didn't go away entirely. They were redirected. The maintenance technician, along with a bank employee who was supposedly in on the scheme, were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit theft, grand larceny, and multiple federal crimes related to bank security violations. The case made local news. Marcus's name was cleared, and suddenly he was a hero. The college student who'd accidentally foiled a $500,000 bank heist. But here's where the story takes on an interesting dimension that doesn't fit into simple hero or villain categories. Marcus's video, the one he'd recorded at the ATM, went viral. Students at his university recognized him. Screenshots from the footage circulated on social media. What was supposed to be evidence used in a criminal investigation became internet content. Some people celebrated him as the honest student who'd done the right thing. Others criticized him for recording the incident in the first place. Some people made jokes about the situation. Others made conspiracy theories about whether there was more to the story. Marcus became unwillingly famous. His privacy was invaded. His face was known. Strangers approached him on campus asking for details about the incident. Some people tried to befriend him, expecting he'd been rewarded money for his role in stopping the theft. Others avoided him, suspicious that there was still some sinister angle they didn't understand. The bank did offer him a reward, a modest one, a few $1,000s, as a thank you for being honest and for turning in the cash. But the emotional and social cost of the experience far outweighed the financial benefit. Marcus eventually finished his degree. But he later said that the experience fundamentally changed how he thought about morality, honesty, and the public's perception of right and wrong. What should have been a straightforward, do the right thing story became complicated by timing, perception, and circumstance. If he'd immediately called the police instead of recording the video, would he have been treated differently? If he hadn't taken that initial stack of cash to test whether he would actually do it, would he have been suspected? If he never recorded anything at all, would things have unfolded the same way? These are the questions that linger. The $500,000 ATM discovery ultimately wasn't a story about finding money. It was a story about how fragile morality can be when tested by reality, and how one person's attempt to do the right thing can become complicated by circumstance, suspicion, and the digital world we live in. Marcus did the right thing, eventually, but in the process, he learned that doing right isn't always straightforward, and he learned that recording everything you do, even with good intentions, can sometimes make things worse before they make them better. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, and hopefully none of us will, just remember one thing. Your immediate action matters far more than your documentation of that action. Do what's right first, record it second, if at all. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more. Peace out.